All right, the sweeper position. We've got Brian Maggi. He's the co-founder and head of product of Cola. Cola presented at SF about a year ago or so, and they've made some strides since, so we're keenly interested to see what's new.
So thanks a lot, Miles, for having us back. Again, it was this time about last year, we had our first public demo of Cola, and we announced our beta. So lots changed. We've done quite a bit with the app since we launched. And so I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of a, for those of you who may have seen it before, give you the update. For those of you who haven't, give you a little taste of what Cola is. So one thing I think we do that's interesting, or what's interesting about Cola is it brings structure to real-time conversations. And so you could say maybe this is what comes after bots. But the idea is like, when you work with, text is so popular and messaging is so popular, but one of the things that as more and more people move to using text, and we thought about Cola from the bottom up as text only, what are people going to need? They need to be able to do things like be in multiple conversations at one time, or they need to be able to give the impression that they're there present or whatever, and they want to be able to do things like collaborate. So the things we're seeing is more people have moved to messaging and texting as their primary mode of communication. They're going to need things beyond just typing back and forth. And so what I thought I'd do is just go right into the demo of Cola and show you what we do and give you a taste of what we mean by real-time conversations. Okay, so what you see here looks pretty much like a regular conversation, what you're used to with texting and things like that. Saying back and forth. So I have two phones up here that are on the screen, and then also Erin from Cola is with me. She's actually going to be in on the conversation as well. And so we talk about things like bringing structure and stuff to real-time conversations. And the things I think about is, with text, one of the things is, most stuff is dependent on conventions. People know like emojis, or they know they did emoticons, or there's acronyms and things like that. With Cola, we can bring to it much more useful things like idioms, things that have more meaning that people are used to. So for instance, instead of just sending text back and forth to people, I can use what we call Cola bubbles. And we call them bubbles because, like you see, taking the term from like comic books, that text travels back and forth in a bubble. We have all these different things in the app, and the easiest way to think about a bubble is it's almost like a little bitty app inside a message. It's an interactive message type, whatever. And here you can see the list of bubbles that we have. You pull them up by hitting the plus button. We have, for instance, Giphy, YouTube. So I'm going to do a common one we use a lot called Quick Poll. So for instance, a common thing to do as a group is to try to figure out, where do you want to go for coffee or something like that. So we'd say, and you can imagine if you were to do this in text, and if I sent somebody just a text that said, what do you think of Starbucks? How that different answers you would get back. So with this, you can say, let's do coffee, and I'll say, Starbucks, Pete's, and Phil's. Okay. I send that. Now you can see the other phone on the other side. It gets that. Erin also received that. And this bubble, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to leave the app or anything like that. Then I can actually interact with it. You can see the votes have actually come in. I'll go in here and I'll say Pete's. And I can actually expand a bubble and see, the details. And you can actually see who voted and for what. So that's more of a simple example of a Cola bubble. And since this is a text and it's in a group context, all these bubbles are by inherently collaborative experiences. So there's no user account or user provisioning. You just send a text to people and they're in this interesting collaborative conversation. So unlike bots and everything that you've been seeing tonight, what we're doing is helping facilitate the human-to-human communication to streamline that and make it go faster, or to make it more meaningful. Because when I talk about things like an idiom or things like that, if you were to say to somebody like, where are you now? Somebody could text back, type in their location or something like that. Or why not just simply answer with something everybody understands, like a map. And so I send where are you now? Everybody on the thread gets this. When they respond, they actually show up on the map with their location. And as they move around, if Erin was, further away, you'd actually be able to see it. And for the next 15 or 30 or 60 minutes, depending on what I set when I send it, you will actually be able to track that person's location as they're moving in real time. So the big change to Cola, for anybody that's seen it before, and I'm going to pull that up and then it's easier when I start answering questions, is that we've changed the interface a little bit more, and we've brought things like the bubbles more front and center, so you can do things like start conversations from the bubble, as well as like either have a conversation and add it there. But you can see right now, here's some of the ones we have, and I'll stop right there and go into the Q&A, because there's a couple things I'm sure I can bring up just from the questions.
All right, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Can I keep up with a question? What prevents iMessage from just like stealing your concept and just baking it in and just...
What stops Apple from doing it?
Yeah.
Probably the next developer conference, I guess. I really don't know. I mean, we were sitting there at this year's developer conference, and when we heard them announcing messages, like the first thing we thought was, oh God, here it is. Then we saw Apple's implementation of it. It's very different. Like what we've done is the bubbles themselves, like the messages, they're actual live experiences. With Apple, with iMessage, if you've seen it, it's more like a link to another application. So big difference with Cola is you're never leaving the app, to do these things.
And you don't have to download the bubble.
Right, and you don't have to download the bubble. If there's new bubbles and you don't have one on your device, it can be sent and you dynamically get it. So something I didn't mention too is that we do have a developer kit. We launched that a couple months ago. It's called the BDK, the Real Clever Bubble Developer Kit. And these bubbles are developed using a subset of React Native. So anybody here familiar with that framework, you can relatively quickly develop and build these bubbles and deploy them in the app. So without having to crack open Xcode or anything like that. But to your question, I mean, there's nothing preventing any of the big guys, from ripping us off. We have a provisional patent file, but so those aren't even enough.
Hands up high? Yep.
Other than the gifting and the healthcare, it's hard for me to differentiate the chatbots from the other. But I like this, and I can see that this one does more different things. Is there an Android version?
Not yet.
Is one coming?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been focusing a lot more on adding the new functionality and stuff like that that's in the current 2.0.
Sorry, common refrain. How do you make money?
We have a freemium model, very much like most startups. We are looking at many different ways.
Like what?
So like with freemium, I got a good question right now. I got like $1, $2, whatever you got. No, what we're doing with the freemium model, we've got the free version of the app. It does all the, like the core functionality in the app you get for free. But with the ability to do things like focus on teams and groups, which more for like add more structured things like businesses might use for teams. So there'd be things like better user provisioning, being able to do these things more in private, have bubbles that nobody else can see, be able to deploy them in there. Things that would help verticalize it. So most of the, very similar to some of the things like, very common things like Slack has done. There's certain features that may not be like core to the user interface that also bring value that, you can add to it.
Would that be through in-app purchases then?
No, it would probably be more like through SaaS.
Private label?
Yeah.
Hands up high for Brian. You guys have been quiet over here. Sure. This side.
I've covered it all.
Mark Cantor.
I love cola! Awesome!
All right, Cola.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. And thanks again, Miles. Appreciate
Thank you,
you
Brian.
coming back.